Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody back to our new DCC meetings for this year. I'd like to open up and introduce ourselves. I'm Linda Lukowski, School Committee.
Ronnie Ray Parrott, Salisbury Select Board.
So just to clarify, so resetting microphones, Dylan will adjust the volume. You can keep it about an arm's length away. It should pick you up just fine.
Sherry David, Raleigh Board of Selectmen.
You got to turn it on.
Sorry.
Oh.
It'll turn green, yep.
Sherry David, Raleigh Board of Selectmen.
Christine Nealon, Chair, Raleigh Board of Selectmen.
Patrick Heffernan, Newbury Finance Committee.
Richard Keys, Newbury Finance Committee.
Brian Perry, Director of Finance and Operations, Triton.
Also Brian, Superintendent, Triton. You don't have to talk. Peter, you.
Kelly Smullen, School Committee.
Narissa Wallen, School Committee.
Aaron Berger, School Committee.
Mike Holborn, Salisbury Select Board.
I want to welcome all you here tonight. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Attached is the meeting notes. We don't have to approve them because this isn't an official meeting. The next item is to confirm the meeting dates. Attached is the tentative schedule for the DCC meetings. I haven't heard from anyone that these dates weren't, that they couldn't meet these dates. So the only thing that I do ask is that Rowley and Newbury just let us know where the meetings are going to be, where they're going to be held.
Town Hall for Raleigh.
Yep.
I think the town hall, but I'll find out and let you know.
Just so that we know. Thank you. If you can just email me back. The next item is the DCC meeting purpose and plan. And just to reiterate, last year when we had these discussions, we'd like to have 2 people from each town. This way, if one can't make it, the other one's here. And also to make sure that the minutes get back to each town select boards to make sure that, you know, everybody has the accurate information going forward. A minimum of 2, yes.
It depends on the town. So Salisbury allows more, but I believe Newbury has not allowed because their attorneys said they would have to post it. Salisbury's attorneys said it's not, we're not voting on anything, there's no authority, so, and I don't know about Raleigh.
We're not allowed to.
Yeah, so it's just Salisbury that can have.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know if Narissa or Brian have anything else to add to the DCC meeting purpose.
I was going to say, the hope is that this is, when we revamped the regional agreement, reiterated that this is the communication channel, right? That we want this to be the monthly time where it's a two-way communication. Generally, we set the agenda, but we want this to be an opportunity where we're hearing from the towns and the towns are hearing from us. And if there's something that we need to work on together, that this is the vehicle for that. So that's all I will say.
Yeah. The next item is the general update, and I'm going to hand that over to Brian.
Great. Just to give you some quick updates on the start of the year. I feel like I need some wood to knock on, but everywhere I've been, regardless of the school, regardless of who I'm talking to, everyone has said this year feels good. It feels like we're starting to get back to some new sense of normal, and so I'm feeling great about that. I know in talking with students in classrooms and teachers in classrooms or administrators. It just is good energy. So excited to have that start of the year. Obviously, the one big change that you're aware of is Michael Estuccio started as the new principal at Salisbury Elementary School. He took the helm as of July 1st, so he opened the year as the principal of Salisbury Elementary School. So that, other than that, Tracy Marino filled his place at Newbury Elementary School as the assistant principal. Across the rest of the district, the leadership team stayed intact. Hiring-wise, we also had we'll call it much calmer year. For years post-COVID, we've had such a hard time filling positions. And so we're still not in the world we were in prior to COVID. We still do have some lingering instructional assistant openings that we're trying to fill and haven't been able to fill. But all of the other regular classroom educator and other positions are full, so we're in a good place. The focus of this year, we spent a lot of time with staff at the beginning of the year talking about our work on designing a portrait of a learner. I told you a little bit about this last year. So the concept is the portrait of a graduate has been a high school concept for many years. If you are going through NEASC accreditation, you're actually required to develop a vision of a graduate or portrait of a graduate. We went through some workshops last year, elementary through high school administrators, and we're working on a district-wide portrait of a learner. So rather than this being just primarily about the graduate, obviously that is our goal when students enter at age 3, that they walk across that stage at or about as close to age 18 as possible. But we're focusing on developing what we want our learners to be. So we've started with a definition of learning to talk about what we believe authentic learning really is. That's posted on the website, and that will be developed over the course of the year into this portrait of a learner. We'll be developing core competencies, and so it kind of will be a kind of graphic and narrative representation of kind of the core values, the vision, the mission, all rolled into one, but it will have a graphic component to it. So our hope is that that will be done by the end of the year. There will be staff and community involvement as we make those decisions as we're going through. We got quite a bit of feedback on the definition of learning from the community and internally, externally last year. And we have a design team that has 2 to 3 educators and administrators from all 5 of the schools, as well as high school students on it, that we're doing this work together. So it's exciting work. It's a lot of work, but it's energizing work rather than what we typically are talking about the day-to-day in a school building. It's nice to kind of take a step back at 30,000 feet and talk about why we're here and what we want for our students. Our hope is that this, and my goal is that this becomes a way that we can enact. We developed an equity statement last year, and this is a way we can put that into action so that every student, every staff member, regardless of who you are, has a place here and has a place where they can belong and can thrive. So I'm excited about this work, and you'll hear more about it through the year, but just to give you that heads up that is coming.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
As I was taking notes, I'm not sure if I heard correctly. Did you say there's staff and community involvement, or is it just staff, administrators, and students?
So in the development, it's administrators and educators from all 5 buildings and then high school students. Similar to what we did last year when we have a component like we had the definition of learning, we put that out far and wide for feedback. Same this year. There'll be different components. There'll be core competencies as well as the full portrait that we'll put out to get community feedback. But there isn't a community member on that design team. Buses, I will just say, I'm not going to make Brian talk about buses. So it continues to be a challenge. We are not alone. I will say this, we will be bidding out our transportation. We currently are with NRT. NRT is owned by Go Beacon, and Go Beacon owns every company this side of the Mississippi, it feels like. We're waiting to hear more information, but Newburyport did award a bid to Coach, I was going to say Logan, to Coach Bus Company, which hadn't previously done yellows or school bus transportation. So we're hoping maybe there is some competition, but that will be later this fall. We'll be putting that bid out. We expect that if we have one bidder sitting at the table, which is what has happened historically, that the costs could go up pretty significantly. So we're hoping to avoid that, but that is a reality. We are working, I'm part of a group that we've been working across the state, trying to figure out ways, the superintendent's trying to figure out ways to I don't know what the right word is, fix this, but it is pretty much a monopoly for all of Massachusetts transportation with Go Beacon at this point. So more on that in the weeks and months ahead. Some good news, summer meals. I think you all know that universal school meals during the school year, all students are entitled to a free breakfast and a free lunch. That is federally subsidized as well as through state funding. That is fully funded again this year. Over the summer, Sarah Littman and a whole crew of her staff did run summer meals. There was an open place where people could pick up meals at Lions Park in Salisbury, Salisbury Elementary, and the Boys and Girls Club in Salisbury. And then to hit this side of the district, she actually ran it in Ipswich at the DPW station, and then again out on Route 1. And in 38 days, there were 16,497 meals served. So that is some pretty incredible work done by Sarah and the entire food services crew. They're in the process of getting a van because we are now providing meals to River Valley Charter School. Eventually, we have to have her slow down. She is all in on food, on providing food for students. So all positive news, but I did want to share that with you. That's almost 16,500 meals over the course of 38 days is very impressive. So as far as negotiations, I should say this, the district, last night, the principals were all here to present their school improvement plans. Those are in the process of getting final sign-offs from the chairs and then myself. Those will be posted to the website within the next week. Also, a few weeks ago now, I presented the district strategy for the coming year. So both the school improvement plan and the district strategy is a one-year snapshot that outlines the work that we're prioritizing over the coming year. So the district strategy is already on the website. Encourage you to take a look at that. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. And then, as I said, the school improvement plans will be up on the website within a week, all signed off on and approved. Last thing, I believe, Christine, you are still the...
Yes, I am.
Didn't you have to get all the words out of my mouth? So we are in, Christine is the town representative for negotiations. I was going to say, not it. Yeah, good. I don't think no one's coming for your seat. So we are in negotiations this year with custodial units, which is formerly the head custodians and then regular custodians. That is now a single combined unit. So that is one contract, one unit, one negotiations, and then also our public employee committee, which negotiates health care for all employees. So that is representative of all four of the bargaining units, has a seat at the table, and that's a weighted seat when it comes to the vote. And then retirees have a seat at that table as well, as far as our employee groups. What is negotiated there is the plan, or are the plans, I should say, that are offered throughout the whole district. And that is both the plan, right, the Harvard, the Pilgrim, the design, as well as the shares. So is it we're currently a 70-30 split as far as our healthcare share. The district pays 70% of the premium. We as employees pay 30% of the premium, which is fairly standard. I've been doing some looking into that. There are still districts. We have lost battles for new hires. There are still districts out there that are 85-15 split. That is more rare. There's, I know, one of 90-10. There are still quite a few 75-25 75 district share or town, 25 employee share. But again, we're in the majority, I would say, as well, at that 70-30 split. So I will stay in touch with you. The P&N came together and is going to have an executive session on October 9th, I believe. And there's a couple different things that they have to take care of, including those two negotiations, and then we'll start setting those up. Be happy to answer any questions about anything I said or, oh, good. My brain over here. We also have one transition. Our Director of Technology, Greg Kulowick, I'm not sure if anyone has met him, is resigning. If you are in educational technology and you are on social media, you know Greg Kulowick. So he has the Kulowick Group. He came out of working with Ed Tech Teacher for a decade. He came to us a little over 3 years ago. And he's going back into private consulting. So we have hired a new director of technology who is starting on December 2nd, technically, and Greg will be with us through that time on a modified schedule so that he gave notice over the summer, but he'll be with us part-time right through that transfer date. So we already have the new director coming in on Monday to spend the day, and you're going to begin that data transfer so that everything is in a good place.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian? Okay, moving on to the FY25 budget update.
So I'll keep going. So there is no documentation. So this is context. Every year, we complete our budget by March 15th. The state is supposed to complete their budget by June 30th. I can't remember the last year that the state did that by June 30th. In our budget process, we are required to make assumptions about costs and revenues. Obviously, we can handle the costs. Revenues are outside of town assessments. Our two largest revenues are Chapter 70 and regional transportation. In recent years, both of those ebb and flow. Sometimes they come in a little higher. Our regional transportation came in a little higher than projected for fiscal '24. Chapter 70 came in a little bit higher. We've had this discussion over the years. Usually it's $30 a pupil for 2,000 students. It's maybe 60 grand, 70 grand, and a $51 million budget. Not a huge impact. This year is a little different between I should say our budget assumes what is our minimum per pupil expenditure, minimum per pupil aid of $30. That is now part of the Student Opportunity Act, or that is part of law that we're required to get at least $30 per student, which is in the vicinity of $66,000. That is what we assumed. That was the number on the table, if you will, back in March. As I said, that's finalized sometimes $60 per student. This year it ended at $104 a student. So that is going to give us $159,544, which is not, again, in the scope of $51 million, not huge. However, the second component of this is that, as we reported to you last year, we're starting to spend lots of money on this building. Last year, one example, over the summer, everything got delayed. There is a tight tank, which is a big poly tank and a concrete vault in the ground out by the tennis courts that's freshly seated, so you can see exactly where it is, that holds all of the, from the science labs, which is that lower wing, anything from the sinks, the drains, cannot go into the regular sewer because there could be chemicals. That goes into that tight tank, I think 100,000 gallons, 10,000 gallons. It fills up, we pump it out. That failed. That was original back to the renovation back in '99. It was actually groundwater that penetrated the concrete vault, and so that ended up failing. That was a $38,000, $35,000 plus electrical. We spent I don't know the exact number, a lot of money last year on mold remediation, a lot of roof leaks in the middle school. Actually, the new part of the building had significant, throughout the year, there were 3 classrooms on the first to third floor that we had to relocate, and mold remediation and re-sheetrocking, and then water was coming in again. So we, we have a stabilization account. We've reported that to you very routinely. We're now funding that in our budget. So we have added $75,000. Fiscal '25 is the second year in that reserve policy that the committee has established and voted on, I guess, 3 years ago now. And we reported to you the goal is to put $75,000 per year for 4 years. Fiscal '25 was year 2. Next year will be year 3. So that $150,000, 75 the first year plus the 75, it is transferred to stabilization. We had used ESSER funds and then took money from E&D to set aside the money for what we are assuming will be the feasibility study for the when we hear positive news from the MSBA. That fund at the end of the year was roughly $1.6 million. We were due to add another 150 to it. So call it $1.75 million. We ended up having to tap into that in the vicinity of $250,000. The committee took a vote to expend up to $400,000 as we closed out. We think it's about $250,000 as of today. It's still subject to slight changes, but it's roughly $250,000. So what my proposal to the committee is going to be, and the committee hasn't heard this, this was a passing conversation at a finance subcommittee, but my proposal is going to be, we do a fall adjusted budget. Generally, the fall adjusted budget is the same top line, the same bottom line, and we move money based on hires, right? We assumed we were hiring at this amount. We had salary contingency. Someone came in with a doctorate, and so their salary went up, and so we just balance out the lines so that the reporting on the full budget reports, which is 18 pages of reports, is accurate. This year, what I'm going to propose is, and I'm happy to answer questions about, is to increase the budget by that $159,000, increase the revenue, so there's zero impact to town assessments, and then put that $159,000 in the same line that we use to fund the stabilization and return that money to stabilization. So that takes. Again, we had roughly 1.6. We would have had 1.75. This gets us back to about 1.65. We still will have spent 100 more than we're returning, but the goal is to keep that stabilization strong. And as a reminder, one more time, is that if we're accepted into the MSBA, the first step is funding a feasibility study, and it's estimated between $1.5 million and $2 million. That can sometimes be a hurdle, and we had said all along, I mean, hopefully this isn't new news, we've said our goal is to put the money aside so we don't have to go to towns for a vote for that piece, so that we have that funding available. That's what this does. This takes the money that we weren't able to plan for and puts it back in that stabilization. Ultimately, that is money that is saved by the towns because we don't need to go back and do an override for that feasibility study. We'll talk in a second about the facilities update, and maybe that's used differently. But again, that stabilization account is currently set aside specifically to address short-term, the solution here on this campus, and then long-term, there's a funding mechanism, $150 a year into stabilization, $150 a year into OPEB for long-term sustainability, that when we solve the problems here, that we have the money set aside when things come up like a windows or a roof repair or just general preventative maintenance that isn't $10,000 but is $500,000. So any questions on that? Keep leaning closer. Sorry.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Thank you for doing that, because as we talked, I said, us 3 towns are going to have to go fight for this money to get new schools. And the first thing people are going to say, oh, we're going to let this one go too. So if we're putting money aside, being proactive, it's going to help us sell the schools to our communities.
Yes.
Brian, did you give an amount for The mold remediation, did you say an amount for that?
I did not, and I don't have an exact amount. It was actually Newbury Elementary, it was Salisbury Elementary, and it was the middle school. We didn't have any issues at Pine Grove. Good thing. Everyone take a deep breath. And on the high school side, there weren't any mold issues. But between true like mold remediation, who are the orange and green guys? ServPro, right? Between true mold remediation and repairs, it was in excess of $100,000 easily. Yeah. And we haven't seen that. Last year, I mean, you remember, it was so wet, literally you couldn't get, again, when you would have buildings that aren't fully air conditioned, you just couldn't get the moisture out. So we have not seen that this year.
Okay, moving on to Facilities Subcommittee update. I don't know if Marissa, yeah.
I'm great with that, yeah. You don't have to listen to me for a second. I'll be sure to chime in where I...
So just a reminder on background on this first, I guess. So the school committee, with the blessing of the towns, has put in for, this is now the third year of applying to the Mass School Building Authority with a request to partner on some sort of a project on this campus. It would be determined through that process of what that looks like. Due to a combination of the huge volume of applications that they receive and the, I guess, level of deterioration in other buildings where other districts put in applications, Triton was not accepted the first 2 rounds. The last round was applied for in April, and we'll hear back about it in December. I don't think if you're in the parent community, if you're on social media, there are continual comments about the state of this campus. I don't think anybody is in the dark, even if they haven't been on this campus in 10 years, about the shape of this building, because it is rough for sure. And I think there were a lot of conversations last year about how we cannot just keep waiting on this Mass School Building Authority process, not knowing if we're going to be accepted, because essentially we have to put in that application and then wait 8 months of essentially just continuing the type of maintenance that's getting more and more expensive that the superintendent just referred to. So last year, the school committee spun off a subcommittee for looking specifically at facilities, and it has town representatives to it. So it's been great to have people sitting in and putting in sort of their perspective from the town side. That group was given the charge of looking at alternatives so that if the school building authority acceptance does not come through, or I guess even if it does, like just what are our options for making some sort of strategic plan for this campus. The subcommittee essentially started looking for this Plan B. The subcommittee brought the proposal back to the school committee to appropriate about $30,000, just under $30,000 out of the stabilization fund to hire a third party to come in and look at that. We've had multiple meetings now where that company, Habib and Associates, has been present, where we talk about not only sort of the known problems in this campus, which fortunately they did our facilities assessment back in 2021 most recently. So they sort of know all the issues here, but also when they were looking at this campus for the facilities assessment, they said essentially what would it take to put it back the way it is today. So how do you bring it back to where it is? And one of the things that we keep talking about is there are ongoing issues here that just putting it back the way it is does not solve. So through Habib's work, we found out things like our science labs throughout this building are about 2/3 the recommended size, so significantly undersized. It's standing in the way of productive science instruction here in this building because the kids are crammed in and they're sharing space, and that's a really difficult situation to have, I think. We talked a lot about security because we have multiple entrances in this campus. We have an outbuilding with active academic classes taking place out there where students are leaving the building, going into the out of doors to another classroom space and then coming back into the building in between classes. So there's been a lot of discussion about that. So they went through and they did a look at sort of, based on our populations and our current classes, what type of space they think we need here based on the space that we have. The good news that came back was that other than the science labs and a much smaller middle school media center / library than they would hope for. Most of our classrooms here are within like 100 square feet of where sort of the optimal accepted space is for this, the current set of instruction. The next thing that we did is we sat down and we talked through all sort of the known issues. We had Principal McCrae from the middle school and Principal Kelly from the high school join us for that. Our last meeting, Habib brought back a couple of options of what they called big block plans, which just looked at how sort of what can you do to solve these. So we talked about things like, can you sort of have this new entrance that moves administrative offices close to the front and you have security that's present there and it makes the whole building a whole lot tighter. We talked about, what can you do with this space because the space is not efficiently used to bring in some of those elements that we know the building needs. I don't think anybody was really sold on either of the two options, but there were components of all of them that people that were in the meeting thought would work well here. So Habib went back and is sort of looking at other options to bring in some of the constructive criticism that was given as part of that meeting and also positive feedback. The goal is to have something, just sort of a strategic idea of what it could look like if we were to do something outside of the MSBA process by the time that we hear back from the MSBA in December. We have 3 more meetings currently planned between now and then. I think the subcommittee as a whole and the liaisons believe that we're in a good spot to be at that point of having it's not going to be plans, it's not going to be blueprints, but it's going to be a big idea of what a plan B could look like and have an approximate cost associated with that, so that as we're going into conversations, once we have a response, we can have some really intelligent discussion on what we might want to do moving forward. So I think that's it. Anything to add?
I was going to say, back to the use of stabilization. So if we partner with the if we hear yes, right? So if we hear yes, we have a decision to make. If we partner with the MSBA, we would have ample funds set aside to study. That money, if we partner with the MSBA, we're required to conduct a full feasibility study, and we have to commit them funding a portion of it to studying every possible option: knock down, rebuild, addition, remodel. We had the luxury in Rowley of the 1-year, what did they call it, limited scope repair. They tried this with us in Blue Hills, and it stuck with Pine Grove. It was the only school ever with the state where they.
Anymore, correct?
No, literally, Pine Grove is the only school because Blue Hills did not follow through. But normally we have to spend money studying all of those options. We weren't required in Rowley to do that. They said you can basically, and Pine Grove is pretty much new except for the steel and concrete. You just can't change the footprint. That doesn't exist. So if we partner and say yes to the MSBA, the first thing we do is spend $1.5 million to $2 million studying what the right design, what the right plan is. There's obvious value to that, right? Rethinking for a 50-year solution for the future. The alternative is, if we didn't partner, I should say this, if we partner with the MSBA also, Narissa mentioned that our classroom, they're in the 700s, the model classroom for the high school would be in the 800s. We would have to have 800 square foot classrooms in order to get reimbursement in through the MSBA program. So it could be where there's a portion of the building is remodeled, but it's not reimbursable through the MSBA because it doesn't meet their standards. So it's those type of little subtle nuances that can take something like the MSBA and them saying, hey, we'll pay 52%, and it is not nearly as attractive when you do the math, right? So Pine Grove's, Rowley's numbers was 52 point something of a $38 million project. The town paid $21 million and change of that. So it's not a straight percentage. It's on eligible costs. Site work is not reimbursed. So it's a sign to just kind of tease that out a little more. It's a science to figure out what is the best choice, right? Yes, we would love to just build a brand new building. As Kevin Provencher from Habib said last week, $1,000 a square foot is in the ballpark of where these bids are coming in. This is a 290,000 square foot building. That's a $290 million building. So that may not be the best option. You know, Narissa mentioned those big block ideas talking about this room is horrifically inefficient to heat and cool because it's usually cold in the winter and hot in the summer, even with conditioned space. In one of the plans, he's like, you chop this in half, you add on to the back of the auditorium for set design, downstairs becomes usable space and AV studios and a multi-purpose. So, I mean, it's that type of thing that we can do in the footprint. We could still do those types of things with the MSBA, but we have to spend all the money studying first. If we don't study, that 1.6, 1.7, however much is there when we make that decision, that money is available for design, right? So benefit MMSBA, they're going to pay a good chunk of the cost. Downside, we have to spend money on things that we may not need to spend money on if we know what we want to do. So the goal is not on was it last Friday? It was hard to not get into the detail when you start to talk about, we called about this closing in the front entry courtyard at the high school and making that a commons, an enclosed area where all of the kind of spaces are accessible. And it's hard not to get into the, ooh, we could do this here and that there. The idea, the assignment at the moment is to answer the question, is there a cost-effective alternative, a cost-effective plan B, if we hear no from the MSBA on late November, early December when Diane calls me. And then, even better, maybe that Plan B becomes so attractive that even if we hear yes from the MSBA, it's still the plan we choose. I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies, right, when someone quotes $1,000 a square foot. It certainly doesn't sound wholly feasible, but that's the exercise right now, that by December, when we hear from the MSBA yes or no, we want to be ready to say, okay, then we're going to, the only option is the MSBA, so we're going to try again next year, or MSBA said, yes, we're going to take that and partner and move forward, or Plan B is the path we want to go, and we would move forward with moving into a design phase, and we have that money and stabilization ready to go. So just want to make sure that we were clear on when we say that decision point in December, it's not a design, right? It's not, if you remember from Pine Grove, it's not a schematic design that we've got the drawings and everything ready to go and have public meetings. It's just deciding on a pathway, which way are we going to go? The considerable value add or the benefit of not partnering with the MSBA, we could be designing by next year and fixing by the end of next year, beginning of 26. And that would not be the case with the MSBA.
So if we were to go Plan B and use the stabilization funds, that's just the beginning of it. That's not the, I mean, there's still a cost to the
Correct.
towns.
So they would, yes, good point. So there would still be a vote. So if that was the design money, we wouldn't need a vote to fund the design phase. We would then, obviously, any project, whether MSBA or not, we would have an owner's project manager, an OPM, and the designer. We would go through the whole process. And when we get to the point where we have that schematic design, it would be brought to the towns. And again, as a regional school, we need all three towns to say yes to that plan. So that would be, again, we would want to be working in concert with the towns all the way through so that when we get to that point and have a plan we're presenting, we believe it's something that there's a good, strong chance that it is the will of the voters.
If I can just add one more thing. The subcommittee, no, I wasn't even going to do that. The subcommittee made a super, I think, unanimously supported decision that we wanted to make this whole part of the process as transparent as possible. It's a subcommittee intentionally because we have to comply with open meeting laws. The minutes are out on the website. They're all video recorded. Those are out on the school committee YouTube channel. So anybody can watch this. In most cases, Habib has been bringing it live. So you viewing it is the same as us seeing it. We didn't see in advance. It's happening right there with the explanations, and you're seeing everything on the screen as we're talking through it. So the goal is to be as out there with it and keep people as informed as possible. So I hope people will take advantage of having those resources available and just sit down. It was an hour and a half, I think, for the last meeting, but it is packed with information because we went through, all these different sort of mock-ups that he had brought to show us the different options. The meeting before that, it's all the discussion on sort of the big pain points in this building beyond, a leaking roof and windows and that type of thing. So I just want to put that out there.
Jeff, did you have a question? Can you use your microphone, please?
Whoop, I almost fell down. When they do a reconstruction, do they, let's say, sign a life expectancy to a reconstruction as opposed to a new building? That's not meant to be totally answered because a roof can go in 25.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking, when they use old concrete, do we end up with major reconstructions in 20 years or 25 years?
So I would say there were decisions that were made in this building in the late 90s when it was when they were rehabbing the original 60s construction. It's not the it's not the concrete that's failing, it's the systems that were left in place. So if we partner with the MSBA, a renovation is not off the table. They will always love renovating an existing space. They will always make us study and make sure we're not going to spend more money to retro and upgrade than it is to just knock it down and start from scratch. So if we partnered with the MSBA, the renovation is still a very possible thing. This building, it's called a cast in place, so you look around and you see all the concrete. That is literally poured, and the structure is in the walls and the ceiling. So those across the roof and even through the hallway, and this space is an example, there's lots of opportunity to move interior walls and rethink spaces. So it could be, yes, that we don't get the useful life. If I can say that as the superintendent in any project that I'm going to be part of, we're going to make sure it's a 50-year solution, right? That is the standard with the MSBA, so whether we're partnering with them or not, I would rather not do it than find a way to kind of patch and hand this to my successor someday down the road when it starts falling apart. Yeah.
So, Brian, on Narissa, you obviously know the building better than anybody. Do you feel, or maybe you can't answer, optimistic this time about our application to MSBA? That is anything changed since the last time?
So I would say the numbers keep getting better. So there's a new executive director at the MSBA, Mary Piketty. The superintendents have an annual meeting and conference down the Cape at Mashpee High School each summer, and she did a workshop, and she always reports to us the total number of applications. So the total number of applications, core applications, is down yet again. So when Pine Grove was welcomed in, there were 98 applications, 9, 10, 11 accepted in. This year, there are 47 applications.
Do you know why they're down? Is there...
I think a lot of towns are struggling, and it's I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons, but I think there's a lot of towns who would like to but aren't ready. And so I don't know this as a fact, but my take and folks I've spoken with, I think a lot of those are people who have been previously told no. So I don't know that that improves or degrades our chances. But certainly the amount in legislatively, they increased the cap in the total amount that could be funded. And those are funded, so it increased to 1.2 billion, I believe, from 800 million. That increase is positive, right? That means they can welcome more into the pipeline. And they also made some pretty significant changes with regard to offsetting grants. Remember at Pine Grove, right down to the sign out front with the PTA was going to do a new sign, and they said they would take that off the grant if the PTA purchased any portion of that sign. I mean, just literally no third party. So now, I mean, we could do National Grid electric incentive rebates, and we could get, other private donations that and that feed into the project, and none of that takes away the MSBA grant. So that could be another positive for us. If we were to do, big flat roof, we know we have good space for solar. If we could partner with someone to do solar, and there's an incentive there. So I would say the increase in the total amount in the low numbers would suggest that the number would be somewhere in that 15 to last year was 19 districts accepted. And if that were the case, yeah, we got a 1 in 3 chance. I said that 2 years ago too. I said that last year too.
I was going to say, I think part of the answer, though, is we don't know who we're up against, which is part of what makes it really tough. So, I mean, sometimes you hear about it through the grapevine, but it's not like the MSBA is putting out a list and saying, these are the schools that have applied to, come in for a partnership this year. So we have no idea what we're up against. I know some of the ones last year, hearing about them afterwards, shocking, where kids almost got clocked by concrete falling off the building. I understand why they were in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if these schools that are continue to be told no are going with their own Plan B.
Yeah. Oh, I know there are definitely schools doing that, for sure. Yeah, as far as the planning, you can't deny if the state's going to pay half of a project, it's going to be a good thing, The money is going to be good. But particularly with accelerated repair programs, which we can't do, which is basically building envelope window roofs and doors, I know there's several people who partnered and then ended up walking away because ultimately you had to use the MSBA vendors and do all this study when they're like, no, I can pay a lot less, skip the reimbursement, and still come out slightly ahead. So it's a science, And every situation is different. I mean, we know Whittier is in the pipeline again this year, but the wild card is that we know it's in partnership, that they've had a conversation with the governor, that the governor reached out, and it would be DCAM and state funding as well. So at first blush, you hear, oh my gosh, $446 million. I don't think that's what they proposed. I think they heard that one, But it's a big project. You would think, oh my gosh, they're going to take all the money, but there are other factors that would suggest that's not the case. So if you've got, a Brockton High School or a big something like that, yeah, it's kind of hard when they have to set aside $300 million as their 50%.
Right. So. Is it fair to say that the size might be scaled down from what it was from?
Peter, can you turn your microphone on?
The size of the overall?
Size of the overall school itself based on the population decrease.
Yeah, so we would expect that for our population is roughly the size of Pentucket, and they certified them for a building under 200,000 square feet. This is 286,000, 290,000 square feet. So we know with the same enrollment, because it's enrollment driven, Pine Grove was certified for a building of 63,000 square feet. So they partnered and said, we'll pay for our portion of 63,000 square feet. It's 91,000 square feet. We did that creative extended learning area that became reimbursable. So there's ways to work through that. But yes, the assumption is in partnering with the MSBA, there would be a smaller building that they would participate with.
That could work a little bit in our favor if we did a new school versus a refurbished.
Potentially,
with
yep.
the size.
You can also knock down and repurpose space. So part of the big block ideas, one of the ideas that they were talking about is getting rid of that, right, the whole cafeteria and kitchen, which square footage-wise, 18,000 square feet is easy, but then it gets really cost prohibitive because you're taking, anyone knows in a kitchen, grease traps and plumbing, right? There's a lot of utilities that's really expensive to repurpose. But if there was a space of the building, a wing that we just stop using and repurpose space like this, and this floor print, becomes double just by making this 2 stories. So yeah, we assume we have more space. The fit test that Habib did shows that we have, the spaces are largely smaller than MSBA standard individual spaces. Square footage wise, we have significant excess square footage overall.
Do we ever have to worry about the location considering wastewater?
Meaning a new location?
No, this location, meaning a real rebuild or a new school, the way we treat our wastewater, is that suitable for the next 50 years?
Yeah, I'm going to assume, and we don't have this on science proven out yet, but we will have to do some upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant, for sure. Yeah, I think it's, the field has performed well. Again, blue house on the right as you're leaving is the wastewater treatment facility. It's pumped up the field off of Elm Street where our leach field is. That field has performed well, hasn't given any signs. We have because we operate our own wastewater treatment, we have a guy who comes in and goes in there every day. And I've shared the story, we'll even sip it and show you how clean it is. I have never, 29 years, nope. But so it performs well, but I think as far as the assumptions, yes, we would likely have to spend a good chunk of money in upgrading that. I don't know enough about them to know what portions you use and what portions are reused, but there would likely be. And I remember we added the stadium and we're able to add that capacity to the treatment plant without issue. And that was all approved through DEP and the state. So still lots of questions, but just again to be clear, we're getting big ideas and it's a decision point in December about what do we do next. That's the key. We're not getting into the real designs yet, but it is fun to talk.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian? Okay, moving on to the alternative assessment. You want to take that too?
I mean, I think this is the question for you all. So I don't even know where we go back to as far as how long we've been working on an alternative assessment, and we keep sort of hitting these places of where do we go from here, and then we go back and we sort of re-examine it. So last May, I think it was, Rowley was kind enough to host us at the fire station since it was quite a warm, warm day. To sit down and I think we had a room full of people talking through alternative assessments and asking questions and how does it work today and sort of what could we even look at down the road, because we're once again at that point where we have to make a decision on does this group keep meeting, this working group, and looking for other options, or do we put it on hold and set it aside and maybe it gets picked up by some version of this group down the road, but for right now we're not ready to continue that. The charge coming out of that was to have each town go back to their boards and have and come to their input, what their opinion is on whether we should continue or whether it should just be tabled. So I know Mike mentioned that Salisbury has had their conversation. I don't know if Newbury and Rowley have had their conversation.
So it's on the agenda for this Monday night.
All right.
So our town administrator provided the PowerPoint presentation to the entire board, and I believe the FinCom as well. And we'll briefly discuss it Monday, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to review the PowerPoint. And then on October 7th, which is our next meeting, we'll make a decision as to how we feel we should move forward.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you. I don't know if.
I was going to say, Chris, you know, there's the whole video of the whole meeting, too, that I sent out, too.
That was in Debbie's email to the board.
Okay, good.
Narissa, do you want us to talk about Salisbury? So Mike and I went to that meeting, and we both diligently, probably God knows how many times, shared it with our board, and I feel pretty confident that everybody, did watch it on our board, and we had a really good conversation. Mike put it on the agenda probably mid-August, the August meeting, and the Salisbury Select Board has decided that it is in the best interest of Salisbury to continue to have the discussions. I mean, we can probably know why Salisbury would vote for that, but it was a unanimous vote that the Salisbury Select Board felt as though we should still continue to talk about alternatives.
And then for Newbury, we had our Finance Committee meeting last week, and Tracy Blaze was there, and they were going to set up a briefing for the Select Board when they meet in a couple of weeks in October. Yep.
Because we talked about it, but we really never voted on it.
Right. So thank you, and if you could just, if we can come back to the next one with some idea of what we want to do. And I know we offered this after the May meeting, but, Brian and I are happy to do our roadshow anytime. So if boards have questions or need information or whatever, we can come out. Maybe we can bring Erica along with us and have her talk the town side. But yeah, if you need it, reach out.
I was going to say, so at the next DCC, can't see anything without my glasses, October 24th, so it sounds like we would have those conversations done by then. Great, so we can make a decision. And just also on the facilities, the next facility subcommittee is October 1st. So if anyone's interested, they're all via Zoom. We had one in person, and now they've been via Zoom so that he can present and other people can see.
I would just like to go back to the DCC meeting purpose and plan, and that's what this is all about, is all the towns seeing how open and honest the school is to the towns, and that we have to work together in order to make sure that we're all successful, the towns as well as the schools. And this is a great way to have these conversations, so that when you go back to your select board meetings, everybody has the same information. And as Narissa said, we try and be as transparent as we can, having every meeting we have videotaped so that anybody can see it at any time. And once again, if there's any questions or anything you want answered, Brian, myself, Narissa, or any one of our school committee members. I know you guys are going to laugh, but it takes a village to do what we do. So as you see, everybody in this room, we all have to make sure our students and our communities are taken care of. And without all of us doing the work that we do, it won't get done. So the next meeting is October 24th, and it's being hosted by Newbury. So if you guys can just let us know exactly where it is, we'll make sure that that information gets out. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, have a nice evening, and you're welcome.